Okay, we're coming down the mountain, right? From Matan Torah. And we've come from the preface to Shar Yichud B'Hamuna, which is what we're going to start today. We're going to do 3 days in one, which is yesterday, today, and Shabbos. And the Shar Yichud B'Hamuna ends by saying that the main thing, well, let's start at the beginning, but then quick to the end. Chanuch lenar al pi darkoi. Educate this child according to one's ways, pasuk in Mishlei, and he will never ever abandon them. And the Alter Rebbe explained to us that the ways of every child, and we're all in some sense children, always growing, right? Is that we have a natural sense of connectedness to the ineffable, to the all, to that which we can't define. And it's very evident in children. Somebody asked last time, how do you guide? Hanuch lenar, by the way, it means to educate, it means to guide. How do you guide them to it? And I responded with a simple song. Hashem is here, Hashem is there, Hashem is really everywhere, because my grandchildren and my even kids, when we sang that, they smiled, they got it. And getting it is not a function of developed intellect. Getting it is a function of just resonating with who you really are. And so, Anuch Lenar Al Pi Darkoi becomes a preface. In other words, educate, guide a child in order to feel the presence of who he really is, a creation being created all the time. That's the preface to what we're now going to learn in Haskalah, that is, with our heads, a little bit about that. But before we do that, we like to dedicate our shir to the refuah shleimus of any and everybody who needs a refuah. So I'm open if we would like to say some names of those who need refuahs.
I have a name. It's going to sound a little strange because it is a Jewish boy with a Jewish mother who do not accept their Judaism, and it's Colin Ben Nicolette.
Colin Ben Nicolette. I once had a boss named Colin, Irishman. Okay, you should have a refuah shleima b'korah. Anyone else?
I feel like all Irishmen are named Colin. Menachem Yehuda Nisan Ben Rezel Tivya, and Rina Bas Rivka, Dina Koka Bat Yehudit Odet, Shulamit Bat Sarah. Before Shalema.
Refuah shleima b'korah. Quickly. Anybody else?
Yes. Yosef Yitzhak Ben Lior.
Yes.
Chava Daniela Bas Naomi Chava. And Yehuda Skolda Bas Eliza Chana. And Baruch Ben Yamin Ben Rachblima.
Amen. Refuah shleima. Okay, before we start the Tanya, we always start with Hayom Yom, the daily piece of advice or wisdom. So today's the 8th of Sivan. And Hayom Yom says the physical universe is a mixture. It's a meeting place where God, in other words, God meets physical, which we are going to, interestingly enough, talk about in detail in a moment in Shar Yichud B'Hamuna. It's a meeting place where God meets together, as he says in parentheses, as it were, with man. Man is called the Bachir HaNevroyim, the most chosen of all creatures. Yet, it is also, this is the other side, also called in Kabbalah, as an expression from Shira Shirim, which is a garden of nuts. The word egoz, nuts, having the numerical value of the word chet, which is sin. So it's also a place where a person is put to test and to exercise. If he is the Bachir, the chosen one of all the creatures, he has to exercise his Bachira, his ability to choose a path through the garden of nuts. God gives man the capacity to choose freely, that man may choose for himself a path in life. Remember, where nuts has the gematria of sin. So, but that is our nature. That's the nature. That's kind of, we're coming from Hanuch Lenar Al Pi Darkoi, educate the child. This is the way we've been built. We've been built with the ability to see through the darkness and to actually ultimately transform the darkness, as we will now begin. Lessons in Tanya, page 835, the beginning of Shar HaYichud V'Ha'amun, the gate of unity and faith. And I mean, it's interesting to note that faith, Emunah itself, is not something that comes from intellect. Emunah is something that's deeper than intellect. We have a natural Emunah, a natural sense of connection with Hashem. And this will now explain, as I said earlier, a bit of the understanding of how that comes about. Okay, this is on page 152 in Likutei Moharan, if you're looking at this sefer. Okay, first the Alter Rebbe writes a little preface remark that this whole Shar HaYichud Ve'Emunah, which is the gate of unity and faith, he says, L'haven ma'at mazer, the purpose of this is to understand, remember, to bring the Emunah that we have, our natural sense of connectedness to all, to intellect. Because the Tanya in general is, we want to put the brain to work, all levels of the brain, the higher, deeper, unconscious levels of the brain and the conscious levels of the brain as well, machshava shalit alalev, to inspire and rule over and bring forth a strong fire from our heart. Machshava shalit alalev. The head rules over the heart, thought rules over the heart. So we want to understand a little bit back inside. Mashikasa b'zoyah. It's written in the Zohar on Shema Yisrael. Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. The Zohar says, Hu Yehuda Elor. It's the higher level of unity. And that's just this is what we're going to speak about. Hu Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuso La'olam Voed. Blessed be his kingdom. Hu Yehuda Tata is the lower level of unity. But the subject here is Yichud, right? Shar Yichud. Unity, how the singularity of God, the pintala essence of everything, gets embedded in uncountable multiplicity. Okay, so Perek Aleph. This is a pasuk in the Vorim. Pasuk says, know today, in other words, das, we're already talking about a mental faculty, and put that upon your heart, right? And the Sphiros Das connects to the Midos. So this is, again, let's let our brain power, our intellect and our above intellect, that's part of our brain, drip down and influence our heart. Put it on your heart. What? Ki havaya, what are you going to put on your heart? Ki havaya hu elakim. Literally, just simply, that Havaya, Hashem, we say, is Elokim. This is simply speaking, but that Havaya is God. So is it redundant? No. There's a Havaya, and we'll explain what that is. And what's meant to be our God, that is the object of our worship and the source of our strength, that's Elokim, is this thing called Havaya. And we'll explain. This is a continuation of the pasuk. Put upon your heart that Havaya is Elokim, in the heavens above and in the earth below. There is nothing other than that. The Tzorech Lahaven, the Alter Rebbe says, well, you need to understand. Would it rise up in your mind? Sheyesh Elokim nishra b'mayim, that there's a God, and I would put in the word independent, that there's an independent God, independent, acting on his own in the waters, mitachas la'oretz, shetzorech lahazir kol kach, that you have to be so forewarned, v'hashevesa ala b'vecha, make sure you put it upon your heart. I mean, he uses a God in the waters, but would it rise upon your mind that there's an independent source running the sky, and there's an independent source running the below? If so, how does everything get coordinated? How does it that, for instance, if we're using water, that the ebb and flow of the ocean is subject to what's going on in the heaven. There's an interrelationship. There can't be an independent God down here, independent of what's going on up there. So he said, so would you ever think that there could be? In other words, no. Yehine Kasiv, it's written, Pasuk. It's written a Pasuk. La'olam Hashem devoracha nitza b'shemayim. So this is now moving into the answer. There was a lot of what seemed to be independent entities, right? I mean, you don't see the connection between the heavens and the earth. You don't see the connection between the cycles of the moon and the motion of the moon and the ebb and flow of the tide. You don't see that, right? It's not visible. So you have to get something straight on your heart. That, and it's all going to be based for quite a while here on this one pasuk. It says, La'olam Hashem devoracha nitza b'shemayim. It's in Tillim, Psalm 119. Forever. Or you could read La'olam, for the world. For the world. Forever. Hashem devoracha, your words, nitza b'shemayim. But Pirush Baal Shem Tov, what does that mean? Baal Shem Tov explains, Zacharina Lebrocha, key, that devoracha shemarta, these words which you say, and which you said and say, because we'll see how it's an internal presence, but literally these words which you've said, right, in the acts of creation, the acts of creation are speeches, utterances. You said, let there be a firmament which separates between the upper waters and the lower waters, right? So he says these words, and he uses just for an example, Yehirakia, we could comment about why this particular example, but these words, let there be a separation between the upper and lower waters. These words that he said, Tevis ve'oisius elu, these letters, these words and letters. So the Baal Shem Tov, when David HaMelech said, La'olam Hashem devoracha nitza b'shemayim, your utterance is forever in the heavens, the Baal Shem Tov said it's literal. These letters and words, these letters are standing forever within the firmament in the heavens, and they are enclosed within all of the heavens, all of the levels of firmaments and heavens. The seven heavens is brought a lot. The levels of separation. Rakia, by the way, is a separation, the way it's understood in Hasidus. Levels of separation, which include levels of concealment, different levels of concealment, 7 levels down, also corresponding to the 7 midos. So these words that you said, let there be a heaven separating between the waters. These letters, they are enclosed within all the heavens, la'olam, forever. Now he takes the word also, the play on the word la'olam and world, to enliven the worlds, to enliven all of creation. For the Kasiv, as is written, Pasuk also, that the word of heaven, of God, stands forever. Again, la'olam, for the world. For the worlds, any worlds to come into creation, they're all a function of God speak, so to speak. Of course, it's a metaphor. God speaks, so to speak. And just briefly, we've explained many times the metaphor of speech. Stuff is going on inside you. To communicate it, to bring it out, you call it speech. So a lot of stuff is going on inside God, and he decides he wants to externalize it. So we use the Torah uses the muscle of speech. Your words are standing forever. Now here's that. So what if they weren't? What if God were to so-called stop speaking? Right? He's an incessant orator. If he were to stop his orations, the whole world, what? If these letters with which he creates the words, so to speak, we understand it's a metaphor, right? But it's a working metaphor, as we said, because it's his continual expression of himself. If he were to stop that for a moment, and bring those letters back inside of him, into the place of origin, continuing the metaphor, the whole of heaven that we know would be absolutely nothing. And it would be as if it never existed. Because the whole notion of time as well as space. The space, of course, would disappear. Time would also disappear. It would be as if nothing ever was. As it was before he started the separation. Mamish. Likewise, all the creatures, in all the worlds, the upper worlds and the lower worlds, and even down here on this earth, this physical earth, hagashmius, and all the inanimate stuff, right? If there were to depart, if these letters, right, metaphorically, these engines of creation, letters, were to stop being articulated, also the part of the metaphor, even for a moment, the utterances from the 10 utterances with which he created everything, as you said, with which the earth was created, in the 6 days of the creation. If that were to stop, everything would return to absolutely nothing, exactly as it was before the 6 days of the creation. And this is what the Arizal says, even in something which is inanimate, daimim also means silent, like the earth doesn't have a mouth, it's silent. Even the daimim, the inanimate mamish, like stones, dust, and water, they have a level of nefesh, meaning a life force within them, the minimal life force that they are existent, they are extant. They have a nefesh and a life force, ruchnius, spiritual. And what is the source of the reality of even the dirt? It's the enclosement in it of the oisius, the letters of speech, and soramaimoris, from the 10 utterances, which bring to life and bring into being even the inanimate, the that it should become something substantial from something which is totally insubstantial and absolutely nothing, which was the case before the 6 days of the creation. So, and this is an interesting point. I mean, for those who want to understand, wait a minute, there's a limit to how many letters there are, right? So even though it doesn't mention Evan, right? If you look into Genesis, you're not going to find God created stones, Evan, amongst the Asura Maimoris, amongst the 10 utterances, Shabbat in the Torah. Nevertheless, Nimsha Chayas LaEvan, there is a life force drawn to the stone, through the combinations and the permutations and the substitutions of letters, Amisgalgales Beresh Lamed Aleph Sha'orim, as they literally turn in the 231 gates, front and back. Now, I'm going to do the simple way of this 231 channels are created by, if you imagine a circle, and the aleph through taf written around the circle. Now, if you draw a line from aleph to gimel, and aleph to daled, and you continue in that, and then you do the same thing with bays, etc., and you create 231 lines. So these are the 231 gates that are mentioned in Sefer Yetzirah, which have devolved from the 10 utterances, top of page Ayin Zion. From these combinations and permutations of letters, you get the name Evan, which is also, you could say, Aleph Ben or Aleph Binyan. It's the primordial. It's the substrate structure of everything. It's the Aleph. Everything begins in the dust. Man was created from the dust. All the plant life comes from the dust, and all that becomes life force that we take in. So this is the Evan.
How does it happen to be Evan with that circle and lines? How do you get?
Okay, that was again. Draw a circle.
No, I got that. So how do you get to Evan from Aleph that extends
you pick the comment. There'll be a line between the Aleph and the Beis and the Nun. You can take those lines which connect those three letters together, and you have Evan. You need to take combinations of the connections.
The base is connected to each of the letters, so you pick the line that connects the base to the nun.
Right, exactly. And the Aleph to the base.
Right. Okay.
Okay. If you go online and just Google 231 gates, you'll find some beautiful. It creates a beautiful visual. The circular.
You posted it. I remember. I have the visual in my head because you posted it once on the speech. That's the only way I understand what you're talking about. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
So these combinations is 231. Excuse me, combinations. By the way, and this is a side thing. If you look at the word Yisrael, you have these in it. The Reish Lamed Aleph. Ra'el is this determinant of Reish Aleph Lamed, which is 231. Yesh, in other words, Yisrael, Yud Sin, Yesh, there are 231. Is hidden in the name Yisrael, the Jewish people. That's the side thing. Okay. And these connections, these lines connected in specific ways, become the life force of a specific category of things, in this case, stone. And likewise, all the creation in the world, the names that they're called, semach, plant, right? Doimim, inanimate. All those categories of things, their Hebrew letter categorizations, Ein Hein Oisius Hadibur, these are the letters of speech, Amistalshalis, which chain down and recombine from one level to another, Me'asora Maimoris, from the 10 utterances, of the Torah, Al Yedei Chilufim V'Tamures Oisius, through substitutions and combinations, transpositions of all the letters, Beresh Lamed Aleph She'orim, through the 231 gates. Until a particular combination of letters. Now, again, letters, right? Just want to make sure we understand the metaphor. Letters are simply externalizations of an internal force, just like your speech is an externalization of something that you're thinking or something that's going on in your midos. So these letters are externalization, because this is Shari Hamuna, and I hope you can, I'm saying this to help us all begin to see that all the details are all connected back into the breath. And the breath happens to be, as we'll say a little later, divided into 5 articulations, the 5 Hey Gavuras, the 5 Gavuras. 5 is no accident that we have 5 fingers, 5 Gavuras, each capable of, very deliberate and distinct activity. And they come out from the mouth, which we'll talk about, which has 5 articulated powers. And that's, if you go back further, just, back into the breath and ultimately back into the soul, which the soul becomes a metaphor for God himself before the soul becomes articulated into all of its parts. So this is Mislabish Ba'oise Hanibru. These letters, these combos, permutations and combinations, elicit 231 gates, which reach and include Ba'oise Hanibru into the particular created thing that's created by a particular combination, the Hachayoise, to enliven it. Now, why? Why didn't he just go and bring everything into being? Well, first of all, there's no articulation, right? There's no distinction. But secondly, the breath, if this is the mushal, the breath, the inner energy is just too much. I mean, God has to do something in order to create particularization from non-particularization. And as something, which we call a yesh, this thing different from that thing, in order for that to merge, there has to be a concealment of the allness. So this is, he has to articulate. The articulation is one of the ways which we describe the simsum, the articulation and the combination of letters. You can't, if they have all this detailed stuff, you can't do it directly from the 10 utterances of the Torah. Because that number 10, only 10, is much greater. It's a think of it as a capsule containing a lot of fine granules. But you can't just get the capsule. You have to put the capsule into your mouth and into your stomach and dissolve it so that all the granules are released. So the 10 utterance itself won't create the level of multiplicity that God has imagined and wants to be in his creation. It's too big to create nivroim pratim, specific things. And they can't receive the chayas. The receiver would be blown away by that much ore. It's only that the chayas comes down and devolves into one level after another, but each level less than the one before, through combinations and transformations of letters. The gematrias and the numerical value also is a factor here. The numerical value of the particular thing. The gematria is an indication, not an indication, but an encapsulation of the life force within it. Gematria, of course, is the numerality of letters, or numbering of letters. Until it's able to actually bring into being a specific creation. And this specific creation, what it is in godly terms, is its name, the combination of letters. Each of us having a particular combination of letters, indicating a particular kind of nature and characteristic back in its source. That's its name. Which that thing is called in the Holy Tongue. And that is a kli. The name is a vessel for the contractedness of the letters in this name. As these letters evolve from the original 10 utterances in the Torah, because these original letters in the Torah carry with them the chayas, a life force, livro yesh ma'ayin, to create something from nothing, and to enliven things forever, as it says, deraise v'kudshabrichu kulu chad. Now this is a powerful the punchline. Deraise Torah. Where do you find the letters? In our terms, you find them in the Torah. And that's why the Torah is the container of God's himself. Anoichi, we just came from Matan Torah. Anoichi, the very first utterance, Anoichi Hashem Elokecha, Anoichi Hashem Elokecha. The letters Anoichi, we've talked about this before, is an acronym for Ani, I, Kosvis, that's the Chof, I have invested my very self in the letters of the Torah. And that's what makes a Sefer Torah so-called holy, because God himself is invested in these letters in the same way that God himself is invested in the myriad, uncountable fiats of creation. Okay, that's yesterday. That's it. Now we're going to go on and do today and Shabbos, which are a little shorter. We finished the parak. Okay, now parak days. We will also finish parak day, but it's not that long. I guess I should take a pause, even though it's 8 o'clock. Any pause for, any quick questions that are just kind of on your mind that we should address? Okay. From here will be the answer to the heretics Regili Shoresh to awesome and the revelation of their mistakes, who deny in Hashgacha Pratis, in very specific watching and control that the Ein Sof has over every bit of infinity. And so their denial of Hashgacha Pratis, of Oisis and Moisif HaTorah, and in the signs and wonders of the Torah, that they make a mistake in their false imaginations. They compare in their false, we'll use this word, false mind, the creation of heaven and earth, like the deed of a person, a creator, right? He's a very creative person. This creative person makes amazing jewelry, amazing silversmith, right? So that's a person creating, and if we understand that much of creation, we're going to make a big mistake. He's going to explain why. Because let's say of Kli, when there comes out from the hands of the silversmith a vessel, the vessel no longer needs the silversmith. As he can let go of it, turn around and go out into the marketplace and go shopping, and nevertheless, Hakalikiyam b'trabnise, b'tzalmei mamish, and the picture that he made, the beautiful silver item that he made, stands in its form, just as it was when it left the hand of the silversmith. So these fools imagine that's the way God created the world. And there is a body of philosophy around this called deism, believes in God, but God created it, and he created it in such a way that it can go on infinitely, and he went back home, and who knows what he's doing. And they imagined it like this, that he's like the silversmith, he's doing something else, and all the creation is just infinitely spinning on. And that's how they imagine Ma'aseh Shemayim V'Oros, the deeds of heaven and earth. But their eyes are literally covered over. What's covered over is the Hevdil HaGodol, the great difference between the deed of a person, the Takbaloisov, and his Takbaloisov is like his things that he does and the way he behaves. Shehi yesh mi yesh, because a person, a creator, is always creating something from something, right? There's a piece of silver, and I'm going to make it, right? There are tones on a scale, and I'm going to arrange them. There are colors in a palette, and I'm going to invest them on a parchment, etc., etc. Yesh mi yesh, something from something. Even if the something is a very subtle thought or a subtle arousal of the heart, which goes on, of course, in every one of us, and in artists in particular, they externalize that. But there's something preceding the externalization. And once the thing is externalized, the artist or the silversmith can go on with their business, and there's the piece of art. But so what it is, what we have the ability to do, what a creator has the ability to do down here, versus the creator of everything, it's just changing from form to form, even our midos to action, from one form to another. So Mishana Hatsura v'tagmunis hatikas kesef, they're just transforming the piece of silver, the tamuna kalif, from a lump of silver. I'll just turn the page to 154. Just changing the form from a lump to another shape of a vessel. And they compare that, these fools who have a false imagination of how God creates the world, they create it, they compare it L'Ma'aseh Shemayim V'Oros, to the deed of heaven and earth. Shehu yesh me'ayin. The creation down here on earth is always yesh me'esh, something from something. I'm just changing its state, or recombining the yesh differently. But the creation of Hashem is a yesh me'ayin. And simply speaking, something from nothing. So we could go into that, but we'll put it on the side for the moment. This is just in terms, down here, creation is yesh me'yesh. The creation of Hashem is yesh me'ayin. But hu pela gadol, and this is a wondrous thing, a greater wonder, yosem mekriyas yamsuf. The continual investment of God in the creation is a greater wonder than the miracle of kriyas yamsuf. Al derech Moshe. He's going to explain why. Because what happened at kriyas yamsuf? Excuse me. Hashem held back the waters with his strong east wind. Kol halayla, the entire night. And the water split and it stood up like in a pile, like a wall. So here we'll get a little bit of understanding, and it's not going to be exactly the same. He's going to say it's not, how it is that God creates. For God to create Kriyas Yamsuf, he had to blow. Ve'ilu hifsik Hashem es haruach berega, and if he had stopped blowing, even for a moment, the water would have just dropped back, as is its nature. It wouldn't have stood up like a wall, without a doubt, it wouldn't have stood. And he writes a little interesting parenthesis. Even though the nature of water, that it flows, is also a created thing. Nature and how nature functions is a created thing. Water flows. It's an anima chudish, yesh ma'ayin, and it's part of the process of creating something new from nothing. So we see there are different natures of different things. Water flows, and a stone wall, stands by itself. It stands by itself, and the nature of water isn't the same. So he's saying even the nature of things is different according to the different way in which Hashem interacts with it continually. So if that's true, back to our mashal of the water, that Hashem has to be blowing wind into it in order for it to stand up. So this is now a mashal for the creation. How much more so when it comes to Brias Yesh Me'ayin, to get something substantial from something which is totally insubstantial and unspecific and non-differentiated, to get specificity, substantiality, differentiation, to get that which is called Yesh Me'ayin, Jahila Maila Mehateva, which is higher than nature, and it's a wondrous thing more than the kriyas, the splitting of the sea. So so if he had to continually invest himself in the water to make it stand, so this whole creation, which is, I'm going to use the word abnormal from his perspective, it's out of his realm of normalcy, which is infinity, and he's creating from it finitude, something finite, right? That's not normal. That's something that he has to do continually. Otherwise, everything will reverts to that state of infinity and undefinition which characterized things before creation. So, if he has to do that in the water to make it stand, halachas Kamman v'Kamman, how much more so? If God's energy, the force of creation, of creativity, of creation, of the creator, would to be withdrawn from the created being, even for a moment, chas v'sholom, the whole creature and all of creation would revert to its former state, as the water would do when he stopped blowing the east wind into it. There has to be the power of actualization in the thing actualized continually. To keep it in existence, to enliven it, and to keep it in existence. And these are the letters of speech, of the Masora Mamoris, of the 10 utterances, shebehem nivra'u, which created everything. And on this it says, it's the pasuk in Nehemiah, V'ato mechaya es kulon. It says, you enliven everything. And the Reishis Chochmah says on this, Al tikre mechaya, don't read mechaya, that you enliven everything, ela mehave, but you bring everything into being. Just a little nigla thing here. And when it says Al tikre, don't read this, but read that, it means read both. Don't read only this, but also read that. So don't read only that he's mechaya, that he's giving things, enlivening everything, but he's actually mehave, bringing into being the things which he does enliven. This is a
Rabbi
shorthand.
Kamman, did you pass test Sivan?
I'm going now till tomorrow.
Oh, right.
Tomorrow,
It's Friday.
right?
Oh, yeah.
It's Friday, Shabbos, right? So he has to. So his bringing everything to being, that's mehave, is the chayus, is the life force of everything. The ato, now it says ato mechaya is kulam, right? So let's this is beautiful. Hasidus looks at every little piece here. It says ato mechaya is kulam. What is ato? Aleph, Taf, Hey, right? So Aleph, Taf, Hey is bechinas oisis, the letters from Aleph to Taf, right? You bring everything into being, and you enliven everything from A to Z, from Aleph to Taf. And in that word itself, Atah, is the creative energy, which is the Hey. The Hey hu Hey motzos apeh. He brings forth everything. It hints at the notion of articulated speech, because there are five. Hey is number 5, right? So Aleph to Taf, A to Z, absolutely everything in creation, absolutely everything, from the most sublime, Aleph, the Alufoi, the master from the world, Atzilus. I mean, this just came to my head. I've never seen it anywhere. Atzilus begins with Aleph, right? And all the way down, from A to Z, they come through the 5 articulating powers of the mouth in the metaphor, which these articulating powers of the mouth that we have, the 5 articulating powers of, by the way, we have the teeth, we have the lips, we have the palate, we have the tongue, and we have the throat. These are the 5 articulative capabilities of our mouth. So that's the Hey, the letter Hey. And these 5 articulative powers of the mouth are the source of everything from Aleph to Z. They express everything from Aleph to Z, Aleph to Taf. They're the Mokar HaOisi, is the source of the letters. Even though he doesn't have the appearance of a body, nevertheless, the Torah itself gives us permission to make these analogies when it says V'yadabir Hashem. The Torah itself speaks in analogies, right? Shlomo HaMelech calls the Torah Moshel HaKadmoni, the primordial moshel. The whole Torah is a moshel. Every letter of the Torah, everything, every story in the Torah is a moshel that has a nimshal of God, how God operates in it. And the Torah tells us so, because it says, V'davar Hashem, Hashem spoke. So we're not making this up. God gave us this metaphor. V'yemer, v'yadaber Hashem, v'yemer Hashem. V'hi b'chinas es galus. And just like, as I said, you reveal when you speak, so speech is the term, the analogous term for God's revelation of the so-called kuf beis oisius, of the 22 letters, Elyonis, the 22 supernal letters, Linavi, to the prophet. So the prophets have vision into the letters as they are forces of creativity. And these forces of creativity, of God's creation, their shape and form is enclosed in the seichel of the Navi, and in their understanding, in their prophetic vision. And also in the thought and speech of the Navi, it says, Pasuk, Shmuel base, Ruach Havaya Daber Bi, or Diber Bi. It says about Shmuel says, the word of Hashem speaks through me. And his talk, means God's talk, is on my tongue. Rizal, as the Rizal says, B'shar HaNavuah. Uka'enze, and we're going to finish finally. Uka'enze, something like this, he is the enclosement of letters in all the creation. But Kusiv, as is written, with the word of Hashem, the heavens were made, and with the breath of his mouth, all of the hosts of reality. But this breath goes into primordial letters, which goes through 231 combinations until you get a complete histalshelus and disbursement and reorganization and more definition through the chain of histalshelus rabbis v'atzumas, many and strong chains of descent, until all of this breath of God continue, and this is the point, breath of God continually breathing his life force into the world, comes down into this gufni, this bodily world of Asiya, period. On the other hand, the understanding of the prophets, huba atzilus, they understand their vision of God's speak is the speak as it exists in the higher realm of atzilus. Umislabesh ba'olam habriya, as that atzilus is enclosed in bria. Now, I mean, this is an interesting point. It's not, he wouldn't put it here if it weren't important, but the main importance of coming away from this is that Hashem is creating every minutia of creation every moment. And if he were to stop that for a moment, everything would just instantaneously revert to the nothing that it was before and to the nothing which is informing it continually. That's today Shabbos' time. All right, so we have here a bit of perspective on the unity of Hashem so far, and we have a few more paragrahs. A short piece, Shani, but we'll go further. Amir Hashem on Sunday. But any questions, comments at all before we? I know it's a little over time. All right, so let's live with it, knowing that every second that we are existing, we have to be grateful, right? What does it say in the Tilim? Kol haneshama tahalal yudke, right? Every soul praises God, and the drosha that is kol haneshima. With every breath, just imagine living like that. Every breath you take, every single breath, in and out, you're owing to Hashem investing himself in you continually. All right. We'll see you Sunday, Mr. Hashem.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Why can't I end this?